Welcome to the latest episode of North vs. South podcast, where we discuss video games, technology, TV, and movies. In this episode, Tommy and I discuss the PSVR2.
So Josh, PlayStation VR2. I wanted to discuss this as it seems there is a feature that I think you might be interested in.
Yeah? What's this?
Well, the main feature I think that will benefit you is because you currently live on a boat and there's not a lot of space.
Yep.
The headset itself is an OLED lens and it can also support 120 frames per second.
Yep.
When playing games. So for someone who hasn't got much space in terms of room for a big TV, because most OLED TVs you have to get at least 42 inch or 44 inch, this might be a way of you going into like the OLED 120 frames per second gaming. But the problem is, I know you never owned a VR headset, have you?
No, we don't own anything.
No. So I own the PlayStation VR, the first VR headset, and the problem is that I got kind of like, you put it on for like 10-15 minutes and then you just feel like I need to take this off. So I don't know if you can handle, if someone out there can handle VR gaming, like have a headset on and have it on for like a good few hours and play games, then you're sorted, because it costs currently, so the price is £529, which it seems expensive, but when you put in the fact that you're getting an OLED screen, and I just looked up today, the cheapest OLED you can get is like 850 quid. It's not a bad deal, and plus the fact you can play VR games.
Yeah, I mean, the price is a funny one because it costs almost £100 more than a PlayStation 5 console, and the headset doesn't really do anything. It's obviously driven by the PS5. Obviously it does something, but and there's obviously, like you say, the OLED in there. I mean, I've just pulled up the specs and it's like 2000 by 2000 pixels per eye, which is insane. That's almost having a full HD panel just stuck in front of each of your eyes. And yeah, panel refresh rate is 90 Hz to 120 Hz, which is not common for many laptops or monitors today. I mean, high refresh has only just sort of come out. So I haven't checked what you can do with the VR2 outside of the regular VR stuff. So whether you can do like virtual desktops, I don't expect you to do that because obviously it's a game console. In terms of like virtual cinema or virtual large screen TV for non-VR games, I have no idea if you can do that. I've not checked it out.
Well, yeah, so that's what I believe you can. So you get like a large screen in front of you, and it's going to be, because you're looking through the OLED, the picture quality is going to be quite sharp and a lot of bright colours, and the plus the fact you're getting 120 frames per second, the smoothness of the gameplay will be quite good.
Yes, so it looks like you will be able to, but
it's just how long you can keep that headset on for. That's my only like big problem.
That's going to come down to how the headset is balanced, how much weight you can support on your own head. I suspect if you've got a pretty big head, it might be easier than if you've got quite a small head to kind of keep any kind of headset on. I have worn the VR, the first VR headset, and I will say I did not find it comfortable. But I was only wearing it, like there was like a group of like 7 of us or 8 of us, so I didn't spend a lot of time tailoring it and making sure it fitted. I just kind of plonked it on, tightened it up in a couple of places, and kind of just played the games. I'm sure if I'd bought either the first or the second one, and I sat down, I could probably dial it in and get it a bit more comfortable on my head. I also think, like, because it doesn't come with headphones, you have to kind of use your own headphones or buy the PlayStation headphones that kind of wrap around it.
And it comes with earphones.
Yeah, but headphones specifically might help because of the size of the headphones. They might help balance the whole head out. So you've got something strapped to the front of your face, and if you've got big headphones on the side of your head, that actually might help you feel a bit more balanced. Like, I know when I'm carrying heavy shopping, it's easier to carry 2 bags of heavy shopping that weigh twice as much than it is to carry one bag of heavy shopping, because you're kind of walking lopsided and you're using muscles to kind of hold it up. Whereas if you just have that weight across two hands, or even the same weight in the other hand, it's easier to it's more comfortable to walk around. So you might kind of have that with and it's kind of like why there's different ways of doing the headset. You can have the cable that goes to a computer or a console. You could have like a full wireless, but if you have a full wireless, how wireless do you want it? Because some of them have the battery and the computer in the headset, and that might be on the front of the headset, behind, in front of the glass, or it might be at the back of the head, and that's going to put some of the weight, it's going to distribute it behind you a little bit, so that's probably going to make it better. And others still are kind of looking at having a backpack type thing, so it's just still a cable, but you're not connected to anything else in the room. It's just something on your back or in your pocket or something like that. So those different ways of getting the weight out of the headset itself, because of the battery or the processing or the cable or something like that, and either just spreading it around the head so it's not out the front of the headset onto a different part of the body, is kind of going to help. But I don't know how much. Let's have a look at the weight. Do they have it on their website? They do not. Because I wonder how much heavier or lighter it is from the first one.
It's 560 grams. And the original is 600.
Okay, so it's not massively lighter. Like, you're talking about 40 grams difference, and I don't think you would notice that on your head.
The one thing you will know is I bought the PlayStation VR and I really wanted to get into it, but the cables, and you have an external box, and this is why I'm quite more excited about this headset. Is I know people are a bit frustrated why it can't be wireless, but still, like, just to have one cable, USB-C, and then your job done.
You wouldn't be able to get this spec at the moment. Like,
no, not wirelessly, no.
VR is still way too new and way too niche to dedicate the kind of money that they're going to try and to do gaming wirelessly. I mean, I don't know. Are you aware at all about Apple's rumoured headset unit?
I heard something. I did hear.
Do you know how much it's going to cost?
Something ridiculous, probably like 1,500 quid, 2 grand.
I was going to say 1,500 quid is cheap. It's looking to be 2 to 3 grand. And that's not going to be a gaming. It's not going to be a gaming Hertz sort of system. That's going to be for like meetings, FaceTime, virtual desktops, that kind of stuff. I think that's going to be. They haven't, like, it's only rumours at the moment. But like the rumour mill still hasn't worked out whether that's going to be wireless, all in the head. Whether it's going to be sort of like projected from a phone or something, a bit like CarPlay is currently. Because I don't know if you know, but CarPlay is controlled by the phone, and it's sort of like projected or like AirPlayed or something. Like there's some kind of technology that's quite similar to those, which you could use on the headset, or whether it's a complete standalone with all the processing power into like an iPhone-sized brick in your pocket or something. And it's just like, this is a device that's going to cost thousands of pounds, so like 4 times, 5, 6 times more than the PSVR, and even that isn't like full-on remote. I mean, I know we've got the Facebook one, Oculus Rift, that is fully wireless, but I don't know, is that tied to a phone? Like, do you control it through a phone in an instance, or is it completely its own standalone computer? I'm not sure about that, but
the Oculus Quest, I think that's mobile, and I think you can use it on a computer, but you have to sign up for a Facebook account.
But what I mean is, does the headset do the processing, or is there another device doing the processing and like streaming the video signal to the eyes? That's the whole thing. It's like the PSVR is just a headset, whereas the Apple one might be a whole computer that you could use independent of an iPhone. Although reality will probably settle in, and it won't be that, because I just don't think VR technology is worth it to have a headset unit that advanced, because the costs that you'd have to that, to develop it, and to that's one of the things with this Apple one, is that who's going to buy this thing? Who's going to put apps on the thing to make it worth buying? And that's probably why it can seem quite frustrating. Like, I remember, like, you and I looked at VR like 10 years ago, when the Oculus dev kits were first coming out, and it doesn't really feel like VR has really arrived fully yet. I I think maybe that Oculus Quest might be one of the first like consumer ones to really be a bit more widespread, as well as the PlayStation VR units. But outside of those, there's not a whole lot of headsets, and there's not that many good games. Like even the Half-Life Alyx, I've been seeing stuff online about how it's not really. A lot of people are like not considering it canon to the whole Half-Life story, but then that might be for a whole host of other reasons. But it doesn't feel like VR gaming has arrived in the same way as other aspects of gaming has kind of come in, like high refresh gaming, 4K, even 8K gaming is starting to come out. But
no, I heard good things about Half-Life Alyx. I've heard that game was dedicated for VR. It was made for VR. Basically, having the ability to pick up stuff and throw stuff around is something that we've never really done before, and I think Half-Life Alyx has accomplished that. But that's only one game, and like I can't see who's gonna buy the PlayStation VR2. There's like the software at launch is quite. There's not a lot of games.
No, there's loads. There's a lot more that's come out now. There was another there's
really.
Now we're not talking.
But what I mean, like I'm talking like. Yeah, but you're talking like.
I know you're going to say, "Oh, there's a lot of little things," but no, that doesn't matter. Like, it's not like you're going to pick a PSVR and all you can do is Call of the Mountain. Like, there's a few big games and there is a lot of smaller games, but like you can buy the PSVR2 now, and there is a decent sized library of content available for it. Yes, some of it is older games remade, like the Resident Evil. There's another Resident Evil
Village.
Yeah, one of them's done and one of them's coming up because there's 2 games, isn't there, for VR?
Resident Evil 8, they're getting a VR patch, and it's maybe Resident Evil 2 remake? No, sorry, Resident Evil 4.
Yeah, and I know you're going to say like there's no GTA or Red Dead VR, but like, I mean,
and what I'm saying, there's no Half-Life Alyx where there's no actual. Instead of like the Horizon game, is just a spin-off game that's going to last you 2 to 3 hours. I'm talking like a full-fledged game that was built for VR.
Yeah, but how long is Half-Life Alyx? Because that's just a spin-off game.
Well, you can play that for at least a good 15, 16 hours.
It's the PC equivalent of Call of the Mountain, because PC gaming is a bit more sort of like into it in such. Okay, it is like 5 times longer than Call of the Mountain might end up being, but it kind of warrants it just because it's a PC platform. But it's still, they are very similar. They're first-party platform games that satisfy that big IP itch, and then you've got all the other stuff that kind of get you into. Because the thing about VR is that not all the headsets respond the same way. The controllers, the headsets themselves, the way they track. So you can play the same game on different headset systems, and they'll feel differently. They might feel better on others, or don't work at all on other ones that they are released on for one reason or another. And that is obviously a problem, because how are developers? They want to get their games on all these platforms, but how do they do that without spending a ton of money waiting in queue for either development kits or having to just buy retail units so they can do their testing, and having to make sure they support the VR2, which has got 3-finger support, or other units that don't have any finger gesture support and just have some buttons or something. And it's, like trying to build your gameplay that isn't. So like one thing about the PS5, and maybe the PS4 has this as well, but there's a speaker in the controller. And there's some games that will utilize the speaker. So like talking about Horizon, in Forbidden West, and I can't remember if Zero Dawn did it because I played it on PC, but your weapons, like if you drew the bow, you could hear like the tension in the bow through the controller speaker. On the PC and on the Xbox, that would just come out the TV speakers. So that's not on the Xbox, it was a PC and PS5 exclusive. But so that's something that it's like, this is a component where we can add something to this platform. But if you have another platform that doesn't have that feature, you're not missing it. The same with the triggers. So you take a game like Hogwarts Legacy, which is a cross-platform game, and that does utilize the PlayStation 5 unique features. So it uses that speaker. It probably uses the Force touch sensors, but I've not really noticed that because I'm not playing the game. And I think you can also use the gyro or the touchpad in the menu system to kind of move around. Whereas on the Xbox or the PC, I've got to use your mouse, got to just use a D-pad, and then use the speakers for the other stuff. So, it's like, there's these different systems that are 99% the same, but have one or two unique features. With VR headsets, they're kind of like 70% the same, and it's not that they have unique features, but they just work differently. Work differently enough that probably might give a bit of a headache to some game and some game mechanics.
One thing that's quite interesting as well is that instead of the PlayStation VR2 being sold by like Amazon and Currys, it's strictly selling on PlayStation's own website. You can only you have to buy it on their site through their
Yeah, I imagine that might be a little bit of a hold up from stock and everything. So maybe a little bit like what Steam did. Once they've sold out of their initial stuff, they might put you on like a waiting list or something. Because I don't think they're going to sell out as quickly as the console did, because obviously not as many people can or want to buy the thing. But there might still be more than their supply chain can keep up with at the moment, just with the world as it currently is. So
yeah, but I just don't think this thing's going to sell, because, like you said, people will just be looking at that price.
That's probably one of the reasons it costs what it does, is that it probably costs for at least, not a profit, but for at least what it costs them to build, whereas the console, the PlayStation 5 might cost £600 to build, but they sell it for like $450 because they want to make the money up on PlayStation Plus or the video game sales themselves. I think that's perfectly fine. Like again, going back to Apple, that's probably what they're doing. Like some of their hardware, I mean, Apple is never like leaving money on the table, but some of their hardware will cost less just to get people to buy it and spend money on services, because so many people are buying iPhones and buying iPads that they can do that as long as they can get them onto at least the base model. But they might sell, I think like estimates are like they might sell, Apple are thinking about manufacturing 1 million headsets, which is nothing compared to anything else that they make. So they wouldn't expect to take a loss on this hardware, because they would have spent, they'd have spent hundreds of millions on R&D. And obviously PlayStation have got the whole first generation of PSVR R&D to kind of use, as well as all the new stuff. But it's not a loss leader type of hardware. It's something where they will need to get at least something near to what it costs them to manufacture. And that's where selling it directly, where they get 100% of the proceeds, and they're not splitting, they're not doing a 70-30 split with the Argos or Target or Amazon. And it's just, it's they get the money they need without us having to pay £100 or £150 per unit more, to cover the retailer's costs.
So the ultimate question is, would you actually pick one up if you saw, if you was on the website and you're like, oh, you know what, I got some cash here, I really fancy doing VR now. I've got, there should be enough space for yourself, because it's just the one cable, isn't it?
We're not currently saying no, but we're not anywhere near buying it. Like, we are definitely interested.
Really?
Yeah, we are.
I'm surprised. For me, because my experience with the first VR, like, it was such a hassle to set up, and once they got it set up, I could only last 10-15 minutes, and then I was like, I gotta take this off. And I really wanted to do more, but it was just like, I can't do anymore. But I'm hoping that it's, like you say, it's more comfortable, the headset itself. And
yeah, I mean, I've only done one real session of VR gaming, and it was fine, except for that I didn't have the thing on properly. So I think I might be able to faff around with it and get it set up properly, and I might be able to enjoy it a bit more. Now, where we currently live, it would have to be with games that have a sit-down mode. There's no way we could do any VR that involves moving around or swinging wildly, because I can't get any further than 3 feet away from a wall. It's just impossible. So things like Call of the Mountain with the seating mode enabled on, which my wife was saying it does exist, and I would be surprised if it didn't, because it's such an accessible, friendly game. Then we could do that sort of thing. Gran Turismo 7. Well, you don't need to stand up for that at all. That would be a great game here. The only issue I don't know is how the gyros will react, because obviously we're on a boat, and the boat sometimes rocks and sways. So it's like, because it's an inside-out tracking, I don't know how much it utilizes the gyro versus what it sees. If we had the old traditional original, one of the ones, it's the HTC Vive. That's the one where you put the dots on the ceiling, the cameras on the ceiling, and they track where the headset is. That would probably be the better system for us, because obviously we don't want the camera to be moving just because we're moving in space, because we're not actually moving in game. It's just space is moving. So that would be the only thing. And I'm hoping I've got a friend who's got a PS5, and no doubt he will be getting one. So I might have to invite him over with it, and we'll give it a try just to see what it's like. I might have to say, right, I'm going to sit down, play Gran Turismo 7. Can you go outside and rock the boat a little bit, and we'll see how it goes?
You'll be sick. You'll be like,
well, the funny thing, the thing is, right, as I'm gaming at the moment, when it's windy, sometimes the boat does sway, and I can kind of feel myself kind of going in and out and in and out,
no.
and it does feel a bit weird. But yeah, I got used to it, so I'm sure I'd get used to it with the VR headset.
Would you use it for non VR games, so just games that don't support VR?
Well, there's DLC coming out for Horizon Forbidden West, and both Jen and I have played the game. That was back in the house where we could vacate the room so we wouldn't spoil the game for each other. Now, here on the boat, that's going to be very difficult because we have one living space and one bedroom, and the bedroom's not great for spending a lot of time in because it's just a bed and a corridor. So the living room is where Jen will tend to play on a PlayStation and watch TV, and I'll be at the computer, which is, we're within 2 meters of each other. So at the moment, I'm planning on saying to Jen, we'll both play whatever we're playing with headphones on, and we're facing different directions, so we shouldn't see it or hear the story. Now, with the VR headset, if we can play games on a virtual screen with headphones on, that kind of solves that issue. So actually, yes, that would be incredibly useful, as there are more games that come out that we both want to play, but don't want to get spoiled by seeing each other play the game.
That is an interesting.
And that's not unique to us, just because there's a lot of people who will live in small apartments or houses where the similar sort of situation will be, that will be there. So it shouldn't be unique to us. But I suppose if you live in a small space, you might not necessarily have £1,000 to spend on the PlayStation 5 and the headset. So maybe not.
I don't currently have a PS5, but if I did have a PS5, I would personally wait maybe a few years and then see if there's a price drop as well, and see what kind of games are coming out.
I don't know if I'm expecting I don't know if I'm expecting a price drop, but I'm maybe expecting sales around Black Friday and Christmas.
Well, what they might do is, instead of a price drop, they might keep it the same price, but they're like, okay, we'll include this game and that game, a VR game.
It's only because a lot of companies that do direct sales, like PlayStation, seem to be doing a bit more. They just don't often reduce the prices, because why do that? So really it might just be, if they ever come to brick and mortar stores, that you might get it 20% off or 20% off if you got membership or something like that.
The PlayStation VR didn't come with the PlayStation Move controllers, so I managed to get that and a discounted price, and I think I got a game as well that was included. I mean, you just get that included anyway, but I got a good deal of that. That was on Black Friday many years ago, but I do regret buying it because it's somewhere in my loft right now, and even thinking about setting it up and putting it on the headset gives me kind of a headache.
But the VR2 is not like that. There isn't an extra box, because there's 500,000 cables. So
yeah, I know.
With this, it's just one cable, isn't it? So,
and that's the thing. That's why that's the thing that I'm only curious about, because I'm like, if it's just easy just to put in one cable and you're done, then it'll be great. But I'm still a long way off because I haven't got a PS5 yet. But
see, I wonder if they'll ever sell a whole combination, like the console, the headset, and the headphones for a decent price. So you won't get the items individually at any money off, but if you get 2 or 3 of them together, you might get 150 quid off or something. Because at the moment you're looking at over £1,000 just for the console and the headset, and the specially fitted headphones that kind of go around the headset Aren't they like £100 as well?
I don't know. I know they include these little earphones, but that's not going to be very good. So
Yeah, the headphones and DualSense is £140, and I feel like the DualSense is about 40-50 quid on their own. If you wanted a second one, here you are, £85 on Smiths.
I think you get two. You get two dual sets included.
No. I'm talking about. There was a bundle of the headphones. So not the headset, the headphones, and a standard PS5 controller. So that's the DualSense.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I don't know what the the Dual Joys. Is that too close to?
Yeah, I don't know what. Well, you get them, you get them included, so you shouldn't be.
Yeah, of course you get those included, as it should have been in the first place. I did try, like after I had that day where I did the PS4 VR, I actually really enjoyed it, and I went online to see how much I could get a PS4. Brand new or second hand, and then looked at PSVR headsets, and they were all sold out, so it would have been used. And I was looking at like £300 or £400 just for the headsets, the tech demo game, and the Move controllers, and that's on top of the PS4. Because I was looking at the PS4 Pro, because at that point you might as well do it. Because I think with the PS4 Pro you didn't need all of the cables. You only needed like half of them.
Well, no, I think they came out with another revision, a second revision, and that worked as well with the standard PlayStation 4, where it didn't need all the cables. But yeah, like you said, when they were initially sold, they were pretty much gone, and then you had to buy it second hand, and you don't really want second-hand headsets.
Yeah, because that's just disgusting.
It is. Yeah, you don't want to do that. But I managed to get mine before the PlayStation 4 Pro came out. That's the annoying thing, where the PlayStation 4 Pro, like some of the games run and looked a lot better in VR, as they, of course they would, but...
And the thing is, like, the original PSVR wasn't a great VR headset. I remember thinking this is not actually any better than the dev kit that we tried, like, literally 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But it was good enough that the rest of the experience kind of made up for it. Like, I remember going into it thinking, oh, there's pixels here, I can see them. I think the frame rate was pretty good, but it wasn't very high resolution.
No, it's kind of grainy. But as a first VR, if you could get it cheap back in the day, then yeah, pretty good. But I just couldn't last. Like, I tried to play Resident Evil 7 on it, sitting down, and I just couldn't even do that. I was struggling. So I'm hoping VR has come along, and people like me can actually put up with it for more than 10, 15 minutes.
My hope is that... Well, my expectation is that this isn't going to be the great VR experience, but I think this might be one of the first good VR experiences. And it should lead on to other systems that are building on it a more solid, a better, lighter headsets, that kind of stuff.
I hope it's laid their foundations, because like you said before, there's like loads of different headsets and different ways of connecting to the headset, different kind of VR.
And the thing is, it needs to sell in enough numbers to make it worth it for PlayStation to do it again, or for other companies to look at it and think, I want a slice of that pie. Because at the moment, obviously there is market share for the VR, but it's a very small market. No one has really sold it to the wider gaming audience. It's just to the enthusiasts and the rich people who can afford to waste money on VR headsets. Because let's be honest, that's kind of what it is at the moment. It is a waste. It is a waste of money. Like you said, like your PSVR headset isn't really used, and you didn't enjoy using it. And the amount of money you spent on the first one, you can hear from what you're saying your trepidation about buying this next one, because even without considering the fact you don't have a PS5, the cost is probably like £200 more than the original one cost. It's a lot of money to put down on top of all the other money you need to run it. I mean, the same with PC VR headsets. Like, you need to spend like $2,000 to have a PC to run VR at good frame rates and everything. And those headsets can be, aren't some of them like £600 or £700?
I feel like the most expensive is the HTC. That's it was like £1,000, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Or £1,500. And people were buying it because of Half-Life Alyx. They were like, I must have the best.
Also, like, it did genuinely have good hardware, and it had, like, it was the first one to have, like, individual digit control, wasn't it? And then you look at the price of that, and we've got that now on a device that only costs £550. So that, it is trending in the right direction. at the moment, we're just testing the water to see, is this another fad like 3D, or is it something that's going to be here to stay and people will genuinely be interested in?
I think it all depends on the software. If they get the software right and get a game that, like Half-Life Alyx, something that's big, a big title, that's not just a spin-off. Like, have a game, have The Last of Us or an Uncharted made specifically in VR. Like, you can only really play it.
Well, that's the thing I was going to say. Is like, how do you have a game like GTA 6 that is the same story and the same game, whether you play it on a conventional TV or you strap on a headset and you play it in VR? You can't have. I mean, like you said, like,
well, you could do that. You could do that.
How do you make
that was a lot of resource.
How do you make the gameplay feel the same on the same story, but you're basically building two different games on the same story? You know, you're saying like Horizon Call of the Mountain is just a tech demo, and I have seen it described as basically that, and that's completely different from the DLC, which is coming out next month, or the game that came out last year, or the next game that's coming out in a few years' time. That's a separate experience, and it's like, it's not the same character, so you can kind of not play it if you can't, and you're not going to miss out on the big story. When we're talking about GTA or Red Dead, the next Skyrim, Starfield,
I know what you're saying. It's hard because, as for Sony to say, okay, then the next Last of Us will be VR exclusive, you can only play this with the PlayStation VR2. That would take major balls on their side, and they would never do that because they know for a fact that this thing's not going to sell as much. This is not going to sell as the VR2 is not going to sell as much. No one's really going to have it, and
it's not going to sell. It might not sell as much to make it worth building the same game twice to cater for the two different playstyles.
The only option they really have is they need to go to a bunch of developers who are really experienced in VR, who have made VR games before, and say, okay, create us a new IP in VR and see if this thing takes off. And if it doesn't, okay, whatever, but if it does, then great.
Yeah, and it's got to be something other than Motorsport or Microsoft Flight Simulator in VR. Obviously, that's going to be fine. That's the way it should be. But it's these other games that aren't inherently VR games, but would benefit from being in VR.
But also, the fact that not to have it as an indie kind of, like, give it enough money and budget to make it into a AAA game. But I don't know if they're willing to do that. That would be what I would personally do, is test the waters and say, okay, can we make a AAA VR experience, and then hopefully the reviews come out good, and then see if people start buying it and seeing how much the sales are, and then saying, okay, is this going to take off or not? The current software lineup, that's why I'm a bit... It's nice to play Resident Evil 8 in VR and Resident Evil 4 remake in VR, if that is true. But
the other thing at the moment is that it's hard to have games ready for VR on a system that you've kind of kept secret for such a long time.
Well, they don't keep it secret. They tell the dev.
What I mean is, like, in public, they only released details about PSVR a year ago, and these games in development need to take years to develop. And actually, the hardware might have changed in the last 4 to 5 years that we don't know about. So you can't really get developers on board for this kind of thing until it is out, and they know that there's a stable platform that's not going to change for them to develop on. Like, we might see some games in the next 5 years that will be great VR games that wouldn't be possible to have pre-done because they don't want to share the information so it doesn't get leaked by third parties, and they can't share it anyway because they're still testing and making changes as they feel like they need to get it within a budget, the things that they want to do to make it feel like it's part of the PS5 family.
Well, I kind of disagree with that, because normally they would say to the developers, okay, here's what we're thinking of creating, here's the spec of the device, here's and then eventually come up with a prototype.
But it's different. It's different when you've got a console, because a console is just a computer, and the fancy stuff on top is not important it's not integral to the gameplay. It's just, we've got a speaker on the controller, we've got a force haptic on the controller, and we've got gyros. Nothing else about the PlayStation 5 is special other than the fact that it does 4K 120. Like, you could do all of that on the Xbox or the PC if they built the hardware. With a headset, it is completely different because you're controlling the whole experience. It's not a TV that you're outputting to, it's the built-in device. And if that keeps changing, they're saying, oh, it's going to be 90 FPS. Oh, no, actually, now it's going to be 120 FPS, and your game needs to be optimized to run at 120 FPS. And okay, they've done all this interesting thing with foveated rendering, so it's only rendering high detail where your eyes are looking. And that's probably just a hack, because a lot of the games wouldn't be able to do that for the whole screen twice. So I know where you're coming from, but I don't think it would be possible for them to give enough notice to third-party game developers. And like you say, if this Call of the Mountain is only a 4 to 5 hour game, that really does fit in with what I'm saying, is that you can't have a full-fledged 20-hour game before the hardware is properly publicly known about. So maybe we know about it a year ago. The earliest you could think about having third-party developers is 2 or maybe 3 years ago, which probably isn't enough time to get a really good AAA game out to the public.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, I agree with that. Because you look at every launch games that come out for like a console, most of them are not AAA games. They're like
slightly smaller ones, yeah.
They're good games, but then
they're good games, or they're previous titles that have just been updated to run on a new one. Say hello to Skyrim and GTA 5.
Yeah,
which is fine that they're there, but you might be disappointed. I think we had this exact conversation when the Xbox One X, the Xbox Series and the PS5 were kind of announced, and the games for them were announced. So it's like we've seen this story before, and because the hardware is so much harder to dial in for, it's not surprising that not yet there is much, especially third-party, high-quality games.
And that'll be the interesting thing. They will be watching and seeing, okay, is this thing actually selling? Should I create a VR game for... Sony might have to go out their way and say, okay, we'll pay you.
Well, and that's the thing, is only if Sony tell us those numbers. They don't have to tell us the numbers.
Oh, no. But if they go out and say to these companies and say, okay, we will pay you to make a specific game for this, But, we'll have to wait and see. But I think that pretty much wraps up today's podcast. I'm going to leave the liking and stuff to you.
Thank you for listening to this latest episode of the North vs. South podcast. Please feel free to leave a like or comment, follow us on YouTube, or subscribe to us in your podcasting app. Thank you. Goodbye.
Do 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 do.
Do you know, when I record that, normally that takes me about 3 or 4 different attempts, and I cut them together. Welcome to the North vs. South podcast, where we discuss video games, TV, technology, and movies. That was terrible. Welcome to the North vs. South podcast, where we discuss video games, technology, TV, and movies. In this episode, we discuss the recently released PSVR2.